Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 13th episode on the Walk by Faith show. Now, this episode is going to be structured differently. We're still going to have a special guest, and our topic is still going to be centered about walking by faith. But I also want to cover some hot topics because not every person that I'm going to bring on this show is an entrepreneur pursuing a business. However, they have a lot of skills and a lot of expertise in their fields, and that gives me the opportunity to interview anyone. You don't have to be an entrepreneur, but you do have to be an entrepreneur of your life and taking control of who you are and where you're going. So stay tuned for this next guest. Well, hello, Jarrell, and welcome to the Walk by Faith show and to the Walk by Faith family. Jarrell, how are you doing today?
I'm good today. I think today was a good, productive day for myself in terms of work that I did. So, yeah, today's a good day.
If you could do us the honors of introducing yourself and naming 3 things that you would like to change about the world.
So my name is Jarrell Brandon. As Jasmine said, I'm originally from New York, Bronx, New York. I am a political consultant by career. I like, just being myself. I like being in part of conversations and making change happen within our community. 3 things that I would like to change about the world. That's a good question. I think there's a lot that we could change. But 3 things I would say specifically, and I'm gonna throw a little curve in it because I'm gonna include something that I can change about myself as well in it, and then something about changing the world. In terms of changing the world for myself, I think just being more open, continuously to be more open to people's stories, backgrounds, and experiences. And I say that because I'm just forever learning how people come from different places, different spaces, and I never want to ever be closed off to someone's experiences or background or life story. So that's one. 2, I think would be people coming together more specifically within our communities, African American community, Black community. Having more understanding of people's background stories and their history and their legacy. And the other thing I would say change about the world. I want more people to have money. Ooh. I want us all to be like, we don't got to be wealthy, but we're just in a better place financially, like all of us. When I say all of us, I mean us brown or skin folks,
Okay, and Jarrell, that's interesting that you say that because at my job we recently talked about equality as it comes to money, and that means what if you were to give each individual that had under $50K $500 monthly? How do you think that would change somebody's stability and their financial situation if they had just $500 extra? And then once you answer that, I'm gonna tell you why I even brought that up.
I think it would do tremendous wonders. Like even if I just thought about myself, like what could I do with an extra $500 a month? And I'm not even thinking of it in the sense of like just blowing money. I'm thinking of it like in the real sense of like bills that you could pay or saving a little bit of extra money here and there. It would just make a tremendous difference in like everyone's life. Like think about like the people who are pretty much at the bottom of the list or the bottom of the totem pole, and they're struggling paycheck to paycheck. They're barely making it. their current paychecks don't, barely put food on the table and clothes on, their backs or their kids' backs. What an extra, $500. And honestly, it didn't even have to be extra $500. It get like an extra $250 a month. Like where folks knew, okay, like this $250 was coming in, and like, yeah, like I'm gonna be able to buy food with it. And like realistically, like when you think about it, that's what like welfare is in a way. It is that safety net that people need to be able to do those things, put food on the table, buy clothes, be able to provide. So yeah, an extra $500 in my pockets, I know would go a long way.
Okay, so Jarrell, even before this podcast really gets down and deep, I want to give you homework and also the listeners homework. It's called the Fair Shot Book, and basically it stems from the Economic Security Project. And the basic thing that they want to do is end poverty and rebuild the middle class in America. And they believe that cash is an effective way to achieve that. So just as homework, everybody go check out the Fair Shot Book and Understanding the Economic Security Project. Okay? So it's really good. And the author is Chris Hughes. He's the co-founder of Facebook.
Okay.
Just being a small plug out there. So the next question, my friend, is what type of season are you in currently? And I want you to dive in such a way where the listeners really understand, like, who you are in a even more deeper light, but as it reflects and as it highlights where you are and where you're going.
So I would say this current season is the season of renewal for me. And I say that because, like, I just recently started back working. And prior to that, I was home for about 6.5, 7 months, roughly. And a part of that time period was for me to get back to myself, for me to renew me, like, take some time off, de-stress. And I say that de-stress aspect because it's a real thing. I'm not a person who often stresses, life issues, or if I have a lot of things on my plate, I don't typically stress them. I'm pretty good with compartmentalizing things, and just placing, life in its boxes and its sections. And I'm always looking for the silver lining in things. So for me to say, that period of life was to de-stress, it really means something, because I realized that working at my previous job, that I was actually stressed over it. Like, it wasn't a mental thing. It was actually like a physical stress. Like, I did some research and I realized, like, I had small, like, eye twitches. I had just this irritating pain in my neck that would not go away. I went to the doctor. I sought out therapeutic healing and all these just different things. Like, I really tried, like, to find a way, like, to just ease this irritating pain. And it wasn't until after, like, looking it up and then talking to some another doctor who does acupuncture that I realized, I was like, yo, this was actual, like, stress on my body. It wasn't a mental thing where I was, really, like, feeling down and out or anything like that, or I was using something else to cope, but my body was feeling it. So after, that departure, I really did say to myself, I want to take some time to relax. I want to take some time to sit at home, not have too many cares in the world. Once I realized my bills could still be get paid, I really did sit at home for a while and just relax. And that period of time was me getting back to myself. So it was a period of renewal. And now that I'm working again, I'm in an environment in which I like. I'm doing work that I feel is meaningful to the community. can actually, make a difference in someone's life. So it's getting back to myself, getting back to like the basic things. You realize sometimes that when you are in those periods and when you are in a phase of renewal, sometimes you really have to take it to heart. And what that means is like getting back to self. And that sometimes means, starting, back down a step or two or going backwards, in order to go forward. We oftentimes hear you don't want to take steps backwards, but when you're in a period of renewal, you kind of have to realize that might be a crucial part of getting back to yourself, of renewing yourself, is taking a step back or, a couple of steps back, and then, setting yourself up for, that spring forward or just to walk, steps ahead. So that's the season that I'm in right now.
Okay, and you know something, that's so true, because a lot of times African Americans, I can't speak for everybody else. I know my people, we don't recognize stress. We don't take it serious. Mental health and like actually working out, physical health, and like all the things that come with it. There are a lot of things that we really do have to do in order to make sure that we're whole from a mental, emotional, spiritual, even from an economic standpoint. Like money stresses you out. Having a job or not having a job stresses you out. It's just all type of stress that you potentially can deal with. So my next question is, did any new opportunities come about? Were you asked to relocate out of New York City when you were job hunting? Can you talk about those experiences and how you were feeling in that process of like going through the job hunt?
So I can definitely share a great deal of that. When I actually realized, or when I shouldn't say realized, but when I said to myself, okay, well, it's kind of time to start getting back out there, looking for work. You can't sit at home forever. This took place, I want to say about maybe somewhere early December-ish, where I was like, okay, well, it's time to get back out there, start applying for jobs. And the type of person I am, I can, go hard. Like when I want something, I will, kind of move heaven and earth to get there. And that's pretty much how, like, the mindset that I kind of, like, that switch that I just flipped on, like, when it was time to start applying for jobs. And the one thing I had said to myself was, when I start applying for jobs again, I wanted to potentially relocate to D.C. Working in politics, working in government, I think it's necessary that everyone who, wants to, be in that field kind of at least do a small stint in D.C. And it doesn't have to be working necessarily for the government, but it could be working for a nonprofit in advocacy. It could be working for a nonprofit in, in their operations. It could be working for some sort of political entity, whatever it may be. I just, because, it's the capital, the nation's capital, there needs to at least be some, sort of route traveled through that particular area, that district. So for me, it was, time that I said to myself, you need to make that move. And I'll share something else. It's funny because just that whole renewal aspect and kind of finding yourself, I said to myself during that time period that I should have actually gone ahead and done this sooner. And I never really fully figured out what was holding me back earlier. And when I say earlier, I mean like right after college, right after graduation, what was holding me back, but I didn't do it then, and I should have, or at least that's what I said to myself. But thinking about the job application process, I will say this first and foremost, I will never, ever ask anyone ever again for a cover letter. Like, that's just not something I'm going to do when I'm hiring staff because it's annoying, and I'm never doing it again. I may have some questions that I may want you to answer, but I'm never asking for a cover letter again because it's annoying when you're applying for jobs, when you're applying for several jobs in one day. But the application or the job search process was actually fruitful because I, again, like I said, try to look for the silver linings and things. Early in January, I was offered an opportunity to move to DC. I can't name the organization, but I was offered at a pretty premier think tank in DC a job opportunity. And through the application process, as we were, pretty much, I'm like a day or two from moving away, had, told friends and family that I was leaving. They rescinded the offer. And when it happened, I was never upset. I didn't get angry about it. I wasn't frustrated. It was a small part of it was a little disappointing for the fact that it was just like I'm like literally like a day away from leaving. But I didn't have any ill will feelings about the transition or about the setback, I should say, because at that point it's not even a transition; it's a setback. I took it as that was the right move. I didn't think I would have felt comfortable there. I think it would have been a great opportunity in terms of the name on my resume and potential experience. But as you get older, and when you find yourself in a renewal season, in a renewal period, you start realizing the things that you should get upset about, the things that you shouldn't get upset about, and how life just works in mysterious ways. And yeah, not to harp on things that, while they may be important and they matter, there are other more important things out there. Like, you have your health. You know that you can be hired at this point. You know that you can walk into an interview and present yourself to a high standard of excellence, and that people feel that you are qualified to be offered a job. And the reason why the offer was rescinded was, I think, very small. It literally came down to me requesting vacation time off before I started working, and they didn't feel that was like the most professional thing to do. I get it. Every organization and company has different standards, but it was something like that made me just, like I said, realize like, okay, this is not the best place for me. I know it's not going to be, because if that is something that bothers you, that I'm requesting vacation time off before I start, I can't imagine like what may bother you down the line. So that happened, and that just made me at that point have to continue my job search. I just kept doing that, and I got a couple of other opportunities that came my way. And during that time period, it's like the timeline in terms of me needing to get back to work kind of started running out, because at that point my funds that I had available to me started running out. So I said to myself, what can you do to get employment? And I kind of went back to what I knew. I reached out, to places that I already had applied to. And then I also remembered that I had stopped by one of my previous employers one day just to, say hi to folks. And one of the assistant executive directors happened to see me. He was like, "Hey, you want a job?" And at the time when he first mentioned it, I think this was around the time when I was weighing the option, when I had got the job opportunity in DC. I believe it was right around that time period. So at the time, I told him no. I was exploring other opportunities, and when I realized, okay, like, hey, you got to get back to work because your money's running out, I said, well, why not reach out to them? I've worked there. I spent a few years there, and the time that I spent there wasn't terrible. The reason why I left was to explore, new employment opportunities. It would be a comfortable environment. I would know the supervisor. It would be an opportunity to work, again, within the community. So I explored that, and it's strange because the week before I was supposed to start at the new job I'm currently at now, I got 2 job offers. And I had to turn them down because, for me, commitments are big. And being I already had made a commitment to come back here to assist them with a program that they have, I said to myself, okay, no, this is life working in mysterious ways again. While this may be an opportunity for you to jump back into, the work that you want to do, and it's something that excites you as well. You made a commitment, stick to the commitment, ride that out, and then see what life is throwing your way at that point.
I couldn't agree more, Jarrell. And you know something, if a company can't understand that you need a little break before you start working, that's just not it. You wouldn't even want to put yourself in that position.
Exactly.
So,
and the thing about it is they were pre-planned vacations. I discussed them during my interview process with the HR representative. And then when I presented it to the person who would be my manager, they were just like, no, this is unacceptable. And I was a little shocked because I was like, wait, we are really rescinding my offer because I asked for vacation time. But again, like you said, you realize that that's not the place for you. And that's okay.
Exactly. And when God closed one door, he opens another one. And I'm talking, he opened 3, and you just had to choose which one was best for you.
Absolutely.
And so now I got to ask, what is the power of networking? We talk about it all the time, but, what does it really mean? And I'm not saying you meet somebody, you grab their business card, and you walk away. What does it mean to have, a real meaningful relationship with someone over time? Because you can't make friends and everybody's best friends on the first date. It takes time to build a meaningful relationship. So what's the power of networking, and how has it benefited you?
The power of networking. Can I be honest with you? I hate networking. I hate networking. I hate the false structure of networking and the pretentiousness behind it sometimes. And like you just mentioned in your lead up, it's networking isn't just get someone's business card. I think honestly that's one of the fakest type of exchanges. It's like, hey, we're at this event and it's for networking because the session is called the networking session, and you're just walking around the room trying to figure out who pretty much looks good or looks like a cool person to talk to or who might pique your interest for whatever reason. You could, be attracted to them, physically. You could just be looking at them. It's like, okay, that looks like a cool person by the way they're dressed, their suit. And I'm speaking from a guy's perspective. Their suit is nice. They look like they would match my style. Okay, I'm going to go have a conversation with them. And then, yeah, bud, let's exchange cards. You likely don't follow up with those people because I just think, like I said, it's just false. And it's very pretentious. And I just don't like it. I hate it. But what I can speak to is the power of natural networking in the sense of naturally meeting people, talking to them, having a conversation with them. I'm willing to pretty much have a conversation with anyone. And I say that because even at work, I speak to everyone. I speak to the person at the front desk. I speak to the janitorial staff. I speak to the people who aren't even in my department. Now, I may not like everyone, but I think it's important that I at least speak to them. And, I say good morning. I ask how your day is going. You never know, one, how that might affect someone's day, but then you too just never know, the role that you may play, and the role that you may play in that relationship in terms of, does that person now see you as someone they can come and talk to? Does that person now see you as someone who they feel can get things done? I fully believe, that, like I said, the opportunity where the assistant executive director sees me one day and it's just like, hey, you want a job? Like that, I don't think that happens to every single former employee that has worked here. That only, I think, happens because, I'm a relationship builder. I have conversations with people. I will talk to them. I, will try to relate to them and understand, like I said before, where they're coming from, what their story is. And kind of have to pat myself on the back now that I'm thinking about it, that's the reason why I have a job right now, is because I do those things. So networking has to be organic. It can't be false. It can't be pretentious. I don't think you should realistically walk into networking with an agenda. I mean, if you're going to a networking event, sure, you have to walk in with an agenda to some extent, but why not play the cut, play the corner, play the table. I'm not saying sit there on your phone or anything like that, but be in the background and observe a little bit and kind of get a feel for the environment you're in. And I think sometimes when you when you create your own atmosphere and create the energy around that atmosphere, people will levitate towards you. They'll come to you because there's this energy that's exciting or interesting, or they're just curious to know potentially why you're sitting by yourself. And you're just looking and observing the room. That might happen, and you never know the conversation that might spark from that, as opposed to just going up to someone and saying, "Hi, what's your name? What industry do you work in? What do you do? Let me ask you some questions." And then while you're having this conversation, you're just standing there trying to figure out, how can I get ahead with the help of this person, as opposed to, let's talk, let's see, where our paths may have crossed. Let's have some laughs, during this conversation. And before the end of it or at the end of it, we both say, this has been a good conversation. This is engaging. Let's keep this going. And it carries on from there. Some of my best, professional relationships started out as professional relationships, and then, grew into real friendships where, I have my old dean of students where I feel like, I can hit him up, for the smallest of things. And, if it's within his ability, he'll help me out. And that started off as where he was the dean of students and I was just on student government at that point in time. And it's blossomed. And that only happened, I think, because of my openness to be engaging, to have conversations, to understand people, to be willing to connect with people, and then go from there, as opposed to just how can you help me? That shouldn't be it.
Yeah, I'm with you. So as you guys can hear, we talked about Jarrell's story from him growing up in New York, having a job, losing a job, understanding that it was his network that brought him to the opportunity that he had 3 offers after one offer or one opportunity was closed. And this man told you that he was a political consultant, okay? I don't know many political consultants, but you all are about to find out why Jarrell is a political consultant. In this moment right now, we're about to do our hot topic section. Cue the music. So, Jarrell, as
Yes,
a
ma'am.
community, should Black people still unify?
Yes, point blank and simple, yes. I'm forever thinking about that question, as being someone who's involved in the community, as being someone who I feel like my life's work is in service of others. I'm forever thinking about that question because I'm always trying to find the balance. And when I say that, I mean I'm trying to find the balance between the old and the new, tradition and modern, young and old. I'm really always trying to strike a balance because I think balance is important, especially when we're talking about civil rights and we're talking about advancing issues, because you can't ever just leave one side out of the conversation, because then we're no better than the people that we're trying to free ourselves from when we just leave one side out of the conversation. We may not agree with that side of the conversation, but that side of the conversation has a right to voice its opinions and it has a right to feel the way it does. So I'm always just trying to find, the balance of that. And that question is always something I'm thinking about. And what I'm thinking about typically is, did, the Martins, the Malcolms, the Stokeleys, the John Lewises, did they unite the same way we're asking, Black people to unite today? And the answer is no, they did not. Because when you think about it, you had Martin on one side, you had X on one side, you had Stokely who went off and did his thing, John Lewis and others, started other organizations. You have the NAACP and you have Urban League. So you had different fractions, all fighting the same fight for civil rights and equality, and they didn't unite in the same way neither. And I think sometimes we're so what's the word? We're just so enthused to push ahead, and we're so hungry for that freedom we rightly deserve that sometimes we kind of fail to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that we can all be united in the fight and the cause of, people of color, African Americans, blacks, getting, equality, black women being paid the same as, black men or white men, and, men of color not being gunned down in the street when they're stopped by cops, for their tail light being out, or just driving, in the wrong neighborhood, whatever it may be. We can be united in that fight for that overarching goal. But what does the fight look like? It does look like different factions, different groups, different organizations, different individuals having different points of view and how they go about it, different strategies and how they feel we can achieve that goal. So we do have to unite. I don't disagree with that. We have to get to a point where we can all take part in something. That's the unity that has to take place, is where we're all a part of something. So if we were talking about that aspect of uniting, then no, we don't do that right now. We don't have enough, brothers and sisters who are actually engaged. We don't have enough brothers and sisters who are paying attention to, the issues at hand. We have a lot who are, but we don't have enough. We need more. So when we're talking about uniting in that sense of just paying attention and know what's going on and focused and involved in something, we're not doing that. But when we're talking about uniting in the sense of, being a part of the cause, we're doing that. We are doing that. We just now need more. We need more boots on the ground. We need more bodies. We need more voices. We need more advocates. We need young kids who know, the issues, who may not necessarily be able to go out there in the same way, but they're educated in what's going on, so that they're cognizant of, how to, react or be proactive in some cases to situations. So that when we talk about unity and uniting, we have to look at it in a couple of different aspects. And the different aspects come down to, yes, we unite in the sense of we're all, there's many of us fighting for this one cause, and the cause is, blacks, African Americans getting equality and, finally having a seat at the table, and it not be rebutted or it not be the biggest struggle to get, the next black person at the seat of the table. But we're not uniting in the sense that we have enough people involved in the conversation. And that's the aspect that I think that should concern us, and that we have to just pay more attention to. Like the ones who are involved in the fight, in the movement, in the cause, we have to start looking outward again and trying to figure out why more people aren't involved and how we can get those people involved, because it doesn't help us to leave anyone behind.
Now, I just have a question. Does it even matter still in 2018? People sometimes think, and I'm just playing devil's advocate, we had a black president. We black people are now the first. Like I saw this girl, she now owns a Chick-fil-A. Black people are achieving more than they ever have. So what's the point? What's the point in continuing to unify if we're achieving things separately? And how can people that are in power, how can people that are in positions to reach back? Are they reaching back? And is it only just parts of the world in the U.S. that really care? Is it just because New York is super diverse and people really care here? Or, down south, somebody that has no idea about what's going on and they just, just concerned about, and I'm not saying this is just in specific to down south, but, do they care as much as someone here in New York cares? What's the differences in where we live in the U.S. and everybody's agenda?
Can I tell you that, those are a couple of different questions, but those are real questions and real thoughts. And that question, one of those questions actually answers something I just said about those of us involved in the movement having to figure out why there are not more people involved in the movement, more people that we need to be involved in the movement. And a part of it is because they can't concern themselves with some of the things that, that are going on. They're trying to live. You know how we talked about before about, having extra $500. If I can't put food on my table, if I'm working 2 jobs and I'm struggling to just take care of myself, let alone just a child, if I'm struggling to take care of myself, I may not have the time, to go out and protest or go to this meeting. So those things are understandable. What the conversation at that point has to be is, I get it, you really don't have time, but let's understand how what we're fighting for would affect your time. So is it possible that you can figure out, somewhere in you not really having time to make a sacrifice for this thing, whatever this thing might be? In the context that we're talking about the fight for equality, civil rights, even in this day and age, because at the end of the day, while there was 2 bills signed that talked about our civil rights, we're still lacking in many ways, and we're not as, equal as, the paper portrays it to be. So that's the thing that we're talking about, and that's what the conversation has to shift to. Saying I understand that you really don't have the time, that you're working 2 jobs and you're trying to put food on the table for yourself or maybe your family, but understand how this fight that we're waging, this conversation that we're having could affect that. And if you could, somewhere in there, find maybe 30 minutes to an hour, maybe once a week or, maybe once every 2 weeks to dedicate, little something to it where, you're now engaged and now we have one more person involved and you can be the example to the next person who says the same thing. I don't have time. So it doesn't matter to everyone because of certain factors, but it does matter because, again, we need more people engaged. We need more people who are, standing up. We need more people just to show up sometimes. That's what it comes down to. I think that's a real sentiment about people not caring. In terms of New York, I don't know. New York is funny because we are a melting pot, and we have so many different people here. But even amongst ourselves and the different people in different groups, there's still underlying issues amongst them. And again, it comes down to just trying to understand someone else's story and what their life's experiences are, and what makes them them. Like I've grown, in that mindset of just really being cognizant of that is someone else's life story. It's not my own life story. Are there similarities there? What are the differences there? And through that, regardless, trying to remain seeing them as a person, because that's what they are. They are a human being. They have feelings. They have a heartbeat. They breathe the same oxygen. Their blood turns red when it hits the air, the same as mine does. So it's that I think, when we really start to try to get somewhere, if we can do that, we're in a better place. and we're able to, really have those conversations that we need to have and bring people on board.
Okay, and that brings me into my next point. It's almost midterm elections. One, what is a midterm election, Jarrell? And two, how do you get someone to now value that 30 minutes of time to go out and vote in an election that is not the president election? How do we change the conversation in our community to focus on voting every time it's time to vote and not time when it's popular to vote?
So first and foremost, people should know that your job is required to give you an hour before or an hour after work. So technically leaving early an hour to go and vote. So that's something that I think, we as citizens have to feel more empowered about. It's like, hey, I got to vote, or I got to come in late because I'm going to go and vote, or I got to leave early because I'm going to go and vote. And it matters to my community because that's where the tax dollars are going for people who are voting. My congressional representative or my state representative can say, well, all 150,000 of the people in my district, well, it really won't be 150,000, but the overwhelming majority of my district came out and voted. Now that's a case, that's a cause for them to say, hey, my district needs services. Provide my district with services. So on the basic level of voting and engagement, that's why it matters. Because it builds a case for your elected official, your elected representative. If they are responsible, it builds a case for them to be able to argue for more resources in your community, more dollars, more services, whether the services be medical or firefighters or police patrols or even libraries or research centers and things like that. It builds that case for them to be able to make that argument when people come out and vote. Why the midterm elections even matter as much as they do right now is because of the current administration that we have, in the White House. And I'm not going to choose my words. I'm going to choose my words wisely, but I'm not going to choose them. I'm not going to, hold back on, keeping it real, I'll say. The current administration that we have in the White House is not for all of us. It's not for the marginalized. It's not for the Black community. It's not for the Latino community. It's not even for, many of the immigrant communities. It's not for women. It's not for women of color. It's not for, the LGBTQ community. It's not for the LGBTQ community of color. That the administration is not for us. And we also have to understand that the leaders in Congress aren't for us neither. Your Mitch McConnell, your Paul Ryan, they are not for us. They don't have our best interests in hand. They're not thinking about the person making $40,000 a year, what their taxes are going to look like next year, or the fact that someone who is already on public assistance still is, struggling, month to month or week to week. The fact that the vast majority of individuals on public assistance aren't people of color in the first place. They don't have our interest in mind. And what that means is this midterm election. So the midterm election is the congressional, or I should say the federal elections that fall in between when a president first enters office and then when they're either up for re-election or heading out of office. So that happens at the 2-year mark, the midterm, the midpoint of the president's 4-year term. And as I just painted the picture of our White House and our legislative branch not being for us, our only recourse at this point to potentially changing the balance of power. And when I say balance of power, what I mean is pretty much just being a stopgap to some of the things that have come out of this White House is to elect a Democratic legislature in the House and in the Senate. It's the only way to be a stopgap. And if we're being honest, and if we're talking about the crucialness of this midterm election, the Senate is where it's at. The Congress, the House of Representatives is looking like it'll likely shift to Democrats. The way the numbers are, the way certain races are panning out, incumbents who are falling off, which means there's no longer name recognition in that particular district. It's looking like it's in favor of the Democrats, which would be good. But it's more crucial that I feel it's more crucial that the Democrats recapture the Senate as opposed to the House. And I'll say a couple of things. Supreme Court nominees go through the Senate. They do not go through the House. Federal judge nominations outside of the Supreme Court go through the Senate, not the House. Cabinet secretaries, your Betsy DeVos's, your, what's that other guy's name? Ben Carson. They go through the Senate. They don't go through the House of Representatives. And what that means for our agenda, our issues, is we don't have the ability to have those conversations. Our agenda, our issues aren't the focal point because the Senate is not controlled by individuals who are more likely to even look at our issues. So that's why the Senate matters more. And it's crucial that we as people of color get out and vote this November, but honestly, it comes even before November. There are something called primaries, which mean that there are several people running from one particular party, and we need to pick one person to represent the party, and then that one person is on the general ballot come November. We need to be paying attention to those primary races because we want to make sure that we put forth the candidate who is going to have the community's best interests at heart, and who has the community support, who actually can win in November, and who won't forget the fact that people of color assisted in their win. I will point out two key races that took place recently where women of color were the deciding factor. Doug Jones in Alabama and the governor's race in Virginia. Black women were the overwhelming force that elected both a Democratic senator from Alabama, which hasn't happened in over 20 years, and which kept the Virginia State House. I'm going to say that wrong. Which gave the Virginia State House to a Democrat. So just looking at it from that context of the power of Black women, imagine if now we got more, like I said before, having more people involved. We got more Black women involved. We got more Black men involved. We got our Latino brothers and sisters involved, our Asian, brothers and sisters involved. What that would look like in terms of a message and saying we're not going to stand idly by while this administration, they put out detrimental policies, they take us backwards. Heck, they don't even have to take us back to the 1950s. Just taking us back to the early 2000s where, there were environmental ills, where we didn't have standards on our car emissions, or, cars, didn't have a limit on the number of miles per hour that you could get out of a tank of gas. Even though those small little things, rescinding educational rules that protected the disabled, it's little things like that that may not be the bigger picture about immigration or war or taxes. They may not get the spotlight, but it's those little things as well. We're not going to sit idly by while this administration does these things, and then we're also not going to sit idly by when we have a Congress who's supposed to be the checks and the balance of this administration sits idly by and twiddles their thumbs like everything is peachy when they know it ain't peachy. Like, there's no way that some of the things that have happened in the last year and a half are defendable. And I think our politics has gotten to a point where it's spineless. Like, people talk about politics being dirty all the time, but it's not even dirty anymore. It's just, I don't know the word, but it's bad. Like, and that's understating the subject, understating the point, because it's very spineless, and it sucks sometimes to when you really think about it and describe it in that way, that we've gotten to a point where people don't even stand up for basic right and wrongs. And when I say basic right and wrongs, I know everyone has their own moral compass. Your moral compass may not look the same as mine, but there are small right and wrongs that I think we all can agree and disagree with. Or I should say agree with, rather, that, our elected officials aren't standing up for right now, and it's shameful. So go and vote.
There should be some type of website that's like, hey, this is what's really happening, or maybe that's what we call the news, and then that's what our president calls fake news. It's just like, I need a more concentrated area where I'm like, okay, this is the politicians, this is what they're doing, this is what they said they were going to do, and then this is what they're actually doing. And then this is how it's directly affecting. I need somebody to create this website, this app that does that, so we know, one, who needs to be reelected, and two, who needs to get out.
There are organizations who do things like that. Color of Change, I know, is one. Collective PAC is working on that. Indivisible actually has a guide that talks about being activated, gives you kind of like the tools and the resources to get involved. I know the Obama Foundation is working to kind of put together more information about getting activated, being more civically engaged. So there isn't one central hub for it, but there are various organizations and outlets that are putting together that information, or who already have that information on representatives that you should vote for. Most of the larger political political committees that are advocacy based. So think of your color of change, like your Planned Parenthood. What else? What are some other ones that I can't think of? I'm thinking of one specifically in my head, and it's literally founded by Black women, and I cannot think of the name right now. But most of them actually put out an electoral guide, maybe mid to late summer, as we get towards the heart of the campaigning season. They will typically put out an electoral guide, and it'll have what their recommendations are of who you should vote for. So I know while I was at Planned Parenthood, we did ours. It's hurting me not to remember this organization's name, because I think it would be a great resource for your listeners to know about. It's not Circle of Sisters. I have to look it up, but it would be a great resource to have in terms of knowing and getting more information from the perspective of the issues that are important to you. It would be important in that aspect, because they're recommending who you should vote for based on those issues. So if your issue is taxes, Citizens United, which is a advocacy organization that was founded after the Citizens United ruling in the Supreme Court, is to fight back against, corporations being seen as individuals and able to donate to electoral campaigns. So it talks about it from those perspectives. And I think, if you're looking to get more information on that, that'd be the best place to start.
Okay, and Jarrell, I knew you was going to plug us in. I knew you were. But I also got a question because you did not hit on the tax code and understanding the tax code. And people need to stop blaming it on the black man. I'm going to just throw that out there, and I'm going to let you take it away.
That's real. I'm a little speechless on that one. I think we're all to blame for that one. We are all to blame for that one. And it goes back even to 2016 and the presidential election. Hillary might not have been the best candidate. She may not have spoken to all of our issues. I worked on, Hillary supported campaigns during that season, and I always tried to remind people that I think sometimes we're looking for perfection in the good, and while that's an admirable desire, that's an admirable lens to want to achieve, we have to be realistic. And again, I keep going back to understanding people's stories and their life experiences, and recognizing that, people make mistakes, but, that they can come back for it. And yes, there were a ton of issues with that campaign, things that they didn't do right. I said, even before the Democratic convention, she should have spent about 10 minutes, just talking directly to the camera and apologizing to people, letting us know that, she was sincerely sorry for the mistake that she made, and using that opportunity, that, maybe the first 5 to 10 minutes of the speech, to humanize herself and touch on the fact that, she made a mistake, and, she's saying that I'm sorry on national TV. I think if she would have done that, it would have cushioned her from some of the other things that took place as the campaign wore on. The fact that James Comey came back out with, the investigation. Fast forwarding to now, though, I think we're all to blame a little bit, because, even, my, close friends, when they heard about the tax cut, they were like, well, that don't sound too bad. I get a little extra money in my pocket. That's fine. I hear that. We could all use a little bit extra money in our pockets. But you have to think about the steps ahead. You have to think about the fact that, as I said before, someone making under $50,000, when their taxes start to go up again next year in 2019, what does that look like? The fact that, someone making under $45,000 a year could potentially be struggling in another 2 years. And then in 2021, where I think that's where the biggest hike starts to happen, where they'll be owing more than someone making over $1 million. And even if we didn't want to go that far and say $1 million, like, someone who's making, $750,000 a year. The point is that I don't think we all looked at it enough and said that this isn't going to work in the long term. It's going to hurt, people who are already hurting, because our goal in life is to get ahead. Our goal in life is to always do better. Most people have that as a goal in life. They want to succeed. They want to, get to this point of prominence, or just comfort. I won't even say prominence. I'll say comfort. For many of us, that's our goal in life. Like I've always said, I don't want to be wealthy. I'm okay with being rich. I'm okay with being well off to where I'm not, worrying about, whether I can pay my light bill or enjoy the, the luxuries of life to some extent. I don't want to be wealthy and rich. I'll take if it comes my way, but I don't necessarily want it. So that's our desire in life. And how I feel is I think a lot of people looked at the tax cuts and said, well, when it starts to go the other way, I'll be in a different position in life. I'll be making more money. I'll be better well off. That may be true. that may absolutely be the case. You may bust your ass and you may try to get to that point of where you're living more comfortably than you were 2 or 3 years prior. But what we did not look at was our brothers, our sisters, our family members who will not be at that point, who won't be making, potentially $70,000 plus a year, or who won't be making, $100,000, who will be at the levels of only at $40,000. We weren't looking at that. We weren't thinking about those concepts or those aspects of what this does, how this will affect people. I have younger brothers. One of them is, only 3 years behind me, and he's working now full time, and, he's moving up. But I don't think, in another 3 years, he's still finishing school. I want him to, but I'm also being realistic, and I don't think in another 3 years he'll be making $70,000 a year. So where, he won't really feel the potential hurts of a tax cut. He's not, struggling right now in terms of, his finances and making money and providing for himself. But again, 3 years down the line, I don't know what that may look like for him. And I wouldn't want him to be in a position where he's adversely affected. I have younger cousins who are just now getting into, the start of their career and starting to think about, what they want to do, for their career jobs and whatnot. So those are the individuals who I thought about, because when the tax bill was being debated, I said to myself, I said, I won't really be hurt by this. I'll be fine. But it wasn't about me. It was about everyone else. It was about, how I said before, us who are involved in the movement, taking a second to look outward and realizing that there are others who are on the margins who can't be involved. Why can't they be involved? It's things like that tax cut is the reason why they can't be involved.
God dog, Jarrell. Y'all know it get real when I'm over here saying God dog. Okay, the country comes all the way out. So, my last 2-3 questions is equal pay within the Black community. I know we just got done with the New York Urban League Professionals meeting, and we talked about equal pay, and it was just Equal Pay Day. And then the book that I highlighted again goes back to, what was my book that I said? Fair Shot, Rethinking Inequality and How We Earn, by Chris Hughes, the co-founder of Facebook. I don't know, I'm plugging this book because I literally got to hear him speak, and what he wants to do is to just raise the bottom line of what poverty looks like. And there's a senator, I believe, in California, and I'm going to get his name after we finish talking so I can plug the listeners all the way in. But basically, he's doing a beta test in his city, and it's a Black community, it's a Black city, and he's a Black senator or a mayor. And basically, he wants to be, if you don't have a certain income level, he wants to be able to give you that cash. And one thing that I understand is that sometimes we associate poverty with bad. We associate poverty with evil. Or you give somebody $500, they're going to spend it and they're going to do all this bad stuff with it. But it's just like, if you give somebody that's rich $500, they're just going to put it in a bank and it's going to reinvest and they're going to get richer. You give $500 to somebody that doesn't have it, do you know and do you understand that it's the difference between a meal, it's the difference between rent, it's the difference between their car note, it's the difference between their child maybe even having more money to go to school? It's just a trickle-down effect, but we will sit here and say they're going to blow it all on dates. They're going to blow it all on cars and rims, and, don't look at the stereotypical person.
Absolutely.
I mean, but it's just like, what does that mean? What is inequality? What is the pay gap? What does that even mean to any listener that maybe they're in high school or they're in middle school and they don't understand that they're making $7.25, middle, and that's middle wage, I believe. And it's just like, okay, well, what does that mean? What does inequality within the dollar? Why doesn't my dollar equal somebody else's dollar? And we're both getting the same dollar, but it doesn't mean the same. So can you just dive in?
I will. So really quickly, I wanted to mention the women of color organizations that I was thinking about. So it's Sister Song, um, and it's In Our Own Voices are two organizations. They're national organizations that do politically engaged work in various races, and they also do put out information on candidates that they recommend and or endorse. So just as your listeners had that. But inequality honestly looks like you working on a job. Let's say we worked at the same organization, Jasmine, and we got the same title. I may have started a week or two before you, and because I'm a black man, and I have to emphasize the fact that I'm a man, there is a privilege there that I think men really have to start recognizing. Even though I'm black, there is still a privilege there. I still get paid maybe $15,000 more than you. Or heck, we don't have to go that far. Let's say I still get paid $2,000 more than you. I'm a man. They somehow figure, okay, here's $2 extra $1,000 in your check a month. That's what inequality looks like. Inequality looks like where we're talking about buying homes, investing in our retirement, but we as black African-American young professionals don't really make enough to really conceptualize those things. We had a really great panel session at the Urban League event, the Urban League YP event that we had. But we could have gone further. The conversation could have been more in depth because of the fact that we didn't have a conversation about what it looks like to make a certain amount of money. And it matters absolutely. This is the whole tax conversation is about, making a certain amount of money. So if the whole tax conversation is about what your income levels are, what your income thresholds are, why is that not a part of the conversation when we're talking about buying a house, when we're talking about investing, for retirement? Yeah, you can invest even if you're only making $13 an hour, but the person making $13 an hour doesn't really understand. Well, I don't even say understand. That's wrong of me to say that. They're not worried about retirement. They're worried about how can I, get enough hours to put food on the table or get enough hours so that I can pay my rent. They're not worried about retirement. And again, us that are involved in the movement have to realistically start looking at the conversation from that perspective, because I think we're being very detrimental if we're not looking at the conversation from that perspective, because we're leaving people on the margin. While we're fighting for those people, we're fighting for ourselves, we're not bringing them into the mix. And it's important when we start, especially about when it comes to pay inequality, that we're having them in the conversation. Because if I am fighting for myself and I'm already at $50,000+ a year in salary, which honestly living in New York ain't really a lot neither, but it's still better than someone making $30,000 a year. But if I'm there already and someone else is already at 70 and I'm fighting for myself, realistically, I'm not helping the overall conversation because I'm keeping it isolated. Okay, I'll share a real story here, and I'll use it to wrap it up. So while I was working at Planned Parenthood, I actually was making a little bit more than my other colleagues of color. So when I started there were myself and I think 3 other women of color in the office. And at some point, HR came and had a conversation with us about salaries because they were shifting salaries. They were shifting certain people from salary to hourly. And HR came and had a conversation with us in the same department. And me, I think, being a little bit more of the more experienced one, but then also being the more vocal one, I immediately recognized it as not something beneficial to us in the room. We were the for people of color working in this department, mid-levels employees in terms of responsibilities, like management of interns and things like that. So I immediately recognized that this wasn't something beneficial to us as individuals. And I made my, case about this didn't sit well with me and I didn't feel comfortable with this being the case. And it opened up the door for them to express themselves as well. And they felt comfortable at that point expressing how they felt about this potential change. What took place was we actually stayed as salaried staff, the four of us. And we actually also got a significant pay increase because of it. And I remember a part of the conversation that human resources had with us was if we could keep this to ourselves because this particular change was not happening throughout the organization. And I said that I didn't feel that was right. I didn't feel comfortable with that being the case. So I didn't keep it to myself. I shared with other people, hey, I got a bump. I'm just letting you know however you decide to, use this information is how you decide to use this information, but I got a bump out of it. And my status didn't change. And I felt it was necessary to share that information with other people because I got through the door. And I said, I said, that this didn't sit right with me. And it opened the door now. So if you want to take this information and go and say, hey, I deserve to be on the same even playing field, go ahead. And if you want some more advice on it, I'm here. I'll, help you, figure out your argument. I'll help you, have the conversation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I was able to find myself in a position where I was given that bump. I was kept that salary. And it was necessary for me to do the same for someone else. It was necessary for me to share that information. And we have to start having a conversation about salaries and about pay inequity because Black women who, as I mentioned before, were the overwhelming support, in two pivotal special elections that recently happened, but they are at the bottom of the pay scale. They're at the bottom of the pay scale, and that should not be the case. So we really have to start having conversations about pay equity and what that looks like in real terms, what it looks like to have a conversation about asking for more money. I have conversations with my friends all the time who are, mid-level professionals. They've been at a job for a few years, and they're trying to figure out how do I go and ask for more money. And I mean, there's a right way of doing it. Don't get me wrong, but it comes down to simply saying, hey, I've been here for 3 years, or I've been here for 5 years. My workload has grown over that time period. My contributions to the team, to the organization, to the company have significantly increased. And I would like to have a conversation about being paid more. And you start the conversation from there. But if we're not talking about it, but yet we're promoting, go buy a house, go get an annuity, go invest in an IRA, go buy some stocks, go buy some bonds, where that money coming from? Like, where do they get it from to be able to do those things? So, yeah, we got to start having that conversation.
I completely agree, Jarrell. And me and you, we could talk all night, but we do have to begin to wrap it up for our listeners. My question is, did you truly learn? What did you truly learn during your 6 months of renewal? And then last question is, what does walking by faith mean to you? I'm pretty sure it ties it all in there.
Wait, say the last part.
What does walking by faith mean to you?
So what did I learn during my period of renewal? Being that I'm still in it, Because even though, like I said, I've started working again, I don't feel like I've exited this phase yet. Because to me, I see this period of working as a transition. I don't plan on staying here in this position for too long. I came specifically to work on our contract for the summer, and that was fine with me. And afterwards, I will go and explore some other opportunities. So it's a transition phase for me in that stage of renewal. So I'm still in it, and I'm still learning the lesson. But one is you should never ever doubt yourself. I'll be honest and say there were a couple times, as I said, I was approaching that cutoff point for myself where it's just like, yo, am I going to be able to do this? How am I going to manage? Those questions run through your mind, and they should, because it's real. Like, you have to worry about how do you pay your bills. But I never doubted myself to the point where I took myself out the game. I remember after the offer got rescinded, family members and friends, everyone was like, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? Like, calling and texting, like, is everything? And I'm just like, I'm fine, I'm good, because I know me, and I'm getting back to, just being comfortable and stress-free, so I'm good. Like, I get it, like, it's a stressful thing, but never ever doubt yourself is something that I learned. I knew already, but I really learned it. I was tested in that. Because, like I said, I never pulled myself out the game. And then, again, just in that time period, I was able to start doing more in terms of volunteering, in terms of just putting myself out there, when people ask for assistance, and being able to, just provide it. And just continuously learning, like I said, be open to people's stories, be open to, their life experiences and where they're coming from and what they may be going through. In terms of what it means to walk by faith, honestly, what it means to walk by faith is question things. It means to question, honestly, for me, I think it means question what you think God's plan for you is. But it also means stepping out there and just going forward. When I decided that I was going to potentially move to DC, and that's still an option for me. When I decided that, though, I didn't really have a game plan. I didn't say, well, I'm going to live here in this particular place. Literally, the day before I was supposed to leave, I was still on, Google looking at areas and looking up, apartments and stuff. Like, it's so funny because the day they called to rescind the offer, I was actually getting ready to book a long-term Airbnb. I had said to myself, I'm going to get up that morning and book the Airbnb. So, it means sometimes just going for it. Like, you may not necessarily have a plan in place. You may not necessarily know all the particulars. Sometimes it means just, going for it. And you might stumble. You might fall. Heck, you might even absolutely fail. You just might do those things. But recognize that there's a lesson to be learned in all of it. And what my particular lesson is right now is still take time to learn what that, where you're at and what that lesson might be.
I completely agree, Jarrell. I agree wholeheartedly with everything you said. And I just want to end this podcast thanking you for being on the Walk by Faith show and just understanding that, one, you took time out of your day to be here. You still at work, on the job, just, continuing to help people and give back. And I think the best word of advice for any of my listeners right now is just to act, to understand that this was information that we gave and that he gave from his political consultancy. He should definitely start his own business. I'm just putting a little plug out there for him. But it's just like, he gave some nuggets. We dropped books. We dropped names. We dropped a career, political consultancy. What does that mean? Not everybody even knows what that means. So, look it up. And then if you have questions, Jarrell, where can they find you on social media?
You can find me on Facebook at Jarrell Brandon. That's 2 R's and 2 L's. And you can find me on Instagram. It's a bacon, as in like the pig, pork, BACON Society. Yeah, that's good.
That is so funny. I don't even want to like get into why.
I love bacon. It's my own society. I'm in it by myself, but I love bacon. Bacon can go on anything. I'll just put that out there. And we need to elevate bacon to a higher level. That's it.
Okay, well, you guys, that's it for this show, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. I appreciate this. This was great.
Yeah.